Hey, it's Travis Oscar Mike Radio. How you doing? Number 227 on January 28th, 2021. Hope your new year has started off as uneventful as possible. And, every time I get on here, we don't have to talk about people solving the world's problems, even though that's cool. We don't have to do anything else. We can have a good time. We can just talk like two dudes talking the 5-tonner Humvee back to the pause after we do our thing. And that's kind of what I really want to do tonight because I got a really, really cool dude who, I met in the Boston area, fellow Marine, grunt, even though I'm Air Wing. Sorry, Daniel. His name's Daniel Field. We've got a lot in common. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio, my man.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
It is fantastic, dude. And it's one of those things that you look at me, you look at Daniel, and you'd be like, what do they have in common? Right?
Yeah, I can see where you think that, yeah.
Well, just look at the hair. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he has more hair on his face than my entire body, and certainly more on his head than I could ever hope to grow again. So let's just start there, man. That is an impressive beard.
Thanks, man. I actually just started growing it out for the Bruins playoffs one year, and then I looked in the mirror and kind of liked it, so I just kind of kept growing it. So it's been probably 6, 7 years now.
Yeah, no, we're just not even going to talk about that. That is impressive, I must admit. And so he is a grunt, an 0311. I was an air winger. We're different there, but we are still U.S. Marines. So it's like, and we saw each other, right, Daniel, at the Irreverent Warriors Boston Halloween party event.
Yep.
And I walk in, and there's this dude who I know they got Chris Edwards or doing the is it Chris Edwards or Chris Helmsworth, excuse me, doing Thor. I gotta tell you, man, you did a better Thor than he did. Like, I believe that you're a Viking coming off the ship, getting ready to do Eric the Awful on the landscape. Like, you were believable that night.
That is what we strive for, right? Got to sell it.
You did, and you weren't even trying. That was the best part about it.
Well, that was the best part about that costume. I didn't have to get in character. It was me, so.
That's the best. That's the best. And, we started talking and we're like, holy crap, man, we got a lot in common. So just very briefly, if you would just kind of go over your military service, and
sure.
Then we'll get to, ladies and gentlemen, the good stuff.
Yeah, I went to Norwich University for 2 years in the ROTC program. Really figured out during that being an officer wasn't my speed. So I dropped out in my sophomore year, enlisted in early 2008. Got stationed with 125 out of Devens, and did my thing there for 4 years until 2012 when I got medically discharged due to an asthma attack that apparently that was not planned on my part. But yeah, did my thing with them for 4 years, got out, went back to school. Again, figured out that college really wasn't my thing.
Likewise.
Well, gee, who knew Marines aren't into that book learning stuff?
Well, but it's not, I don't have a problem learning. I do have a problem sitting in a chair for, an hour trying to extrapolate what some dude is putting out there.
And that is absolutely it.
A ton of money for the privilege. And then you realize, I don't know about you, you realize that it's just my experience, that it really is simple as showing up and putting in some stuff and you're going to pass. And then no one cares if you got an A, no one cares if you got a B. All they care about is seeing that you have that. Daniel, is it the ultimate participation trophy or what?
Pretty much is. There's that old joke. What do you call the guy who graduated last in his class at medical school? Doctor.
Right.
So, it really, for me, I think the moment I knew that school was not my speed is I was sitting in, I think, a history class, which is weird because I'm a huge history nerd. But I was just kind of sitting there and it just kind of popped in my head, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I could be out making money or just improving myself on my own. Meanwhile, I'm paying money to sit here and listen to some dude talk for an hour and a half about something that is not anything to do with what I was going to school for, which was engineering.
And that happens, and it's not that I don't want to learn. It's not that I embrace ignorance. It's just like, okay, how, if it's not impacting my mission focus, I'm not interested in it. It's just I don't have time.
Yeah, it's just like I was going to school for engineering, like I said, and I'm sitting there in creative writing and history, which is stuff I already did. So I'm just like, okay, or like you say, this has no bearing on my mission. So why am I here?
Well, I mean, and these are the kind of things folks you start talking about, and it's like, wow. And you know, hey, we're in different age demographics, different backgrounds. I'm not even from Massachusetts, and it's really interesting, man, how no matter where you go, you sit down, you talk to a Marine, and you know, we did different MOSs, but it's still the same because every Marine's a rifleman. There's still basic stuff that we align with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been part of a couple of vets groups now, including Irreverent Warriors and Massel Vets and a couple of other places. And it's really great. Like you said, you can just sit down and never have met that person before and just talk. And it's like your best friends in 5 minutes because we all went through the same things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you get out of the Marine Corps, and you get into your current role now. We meet, and you know, the reason I'm doing this, ladies and gentlemen, is just so you can see that, you know, hey, we didn't know each other. We are very different dudes, but there's still some things that bond us together. One is our Marine Corps service, but two, because you know, we started talking because we were in the same original gang. We meet at the Irreverent Warriors Halloween party event. I want to be a big shout out to Gladys, who put that on, and you know, had a fun time for us all. And if you missed that, you missed a great time. And so, Gladys, thank you very much for keeping all of us hooligans in line with all the masks and restrictions. I can tell you, Daniel and I had a fabulous time, right, Dan?
Yeah, it was a great time. I'm really glad that people like her and and the other guys who run IW are out there to really put in the work and make sure that we have safe and positive events that we can all go to and just, hang out with other vets.
Absolutely, man. So we're hanging out, and we talked about our military service. We cracked each other's skulls a little bit because he's got the hammer, and I'll have a picture of Daniel with the hammer, and we start talking about music and Warhammer, and that is when it got lit. So let's talk
Right?
about music first, man. Let's talk about music first because you know what got you into music and what's your favorite type.
Absolutely, man. Like I've been into music my entire life. My parents kind of got me interested in it. A huge rock and metal fan. Just a very fun genre. It speaks to me, especially seeing it live. Just no other feeling like it. Of just getting in the pit and thrashing around and just doing
Yes.
what we do. Um, and then I got away from music for a little bit because I had other stuff going on. I wasn't really paying attention to the scene very much. And then I was at work probably 5, 6 years ago, and I heard the Lost Battalion by Sabaton, and I'd never heard them before. Never hadn't really listened to metal in a while, and it was just fucking awesome. And I within like 3 days, I ended up owning half of their albums. I just couldn't get enough of it, and that kind of got me back into it and got the gears spinning.
See, this is what I'm talking about because I picked up Sabaton's Careless Rex album, and I am like, you've got to be
Fantastic record.
yes. And then I started really digging into how they're a Swedish metal band that is committed to writing songs about wartime from a historical standpoint, and it is crazy how good they
I
are.
love especially what they do is that they talk about the event and the people who fought it without politicizing it in either way. I mean, it was they don't like say who was right or wrong or who was good and bad. It was these were men fighting a war, and this event happened.
It really does, especially their last album, which was really featured around World War One, was just incredible.
The Great War was a fantastic record.
Right, and then they had that special about the Bismarck. They had that video about the Bismarck, which, I mean, it's like you said, it's right like the story went. No real commentary, no real opinion. Like here's how it happened, and then I don't know about you, man, but they have that 82nd All the Way.
That was a great tune. That obviously we both know what my favorite song off of that record is. Because it would be one that involves our brethren, Devil Dogs.
That's a freaking awesome song, and they really kill it. Like I'm like these guys didn't serve, but they did it right, and it's just, I mean,
yeah, it's one of my favorite bands. See guys who are not veterans sing that passionately about, you know, the battles that we all talk about, and really do it with such conviction. And, you know, there's a channel on YouTube, Sabaton History, where they go into the history behind all their songs. And it's really great because you get to hear the actual story of what they're singing about, because you get the very basics of it, because, you know, you get a 3-minute song, you can only do so much. But it gets people interested, and it gets people want to learn more. And then you also get the insight into how the song was written and stuff from members of the band.
No, really cool. There's a video where they do 82nd All the Way, and you can see them, you know, I don't know if it's that video, but there's one of the videos where they're watching the reenactment, right? And the whole band is in the balcony, and they're waving American flags. And I was really struck by that, because I'm like, a lot of times you think the Euros really don't give a care about, you know, Americans anymore. And some of those people really do care about what our forefathers did for them.
Yeah, and I've seen them 3 times live, and they bring that up. Yeah,
really.
And when they bring that up during their shows, especially when they start singing about like American stuff during World War II. In fact, I remember one line from Joaquin. He was just sitting there. It's like, I just want to thank you guys, because without what your grandfathers did, we would probably be singing the song in German. And they do really have a way of bringing that to your average metalhead, who most of us are not very martial people, mostly just big, giant nerds in a lot of cases.
But come on, dude, when you hear "For the Gates of Hell, on the way to heaven, for the Nazi line, Primo, Victoria."
And his voice is perfect for that, too.
I mean,
just
doesn't that get you like, baritone. I'm looking for my freaking, you know, 782 gear, my freaking M16. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's like, let's do this shit.
I might kind of hobble to the fight, but I can shoot still. I mean, get me in.
Yeah, right. Sufficient speed, acceptable drag, right?
That's what I'm talking about, and it's really great. And so, I mean, yes. So, what's your favorite instrument, man? Are you a guitarist, bassist?
I am a guitarist. I want to learn how to play bass as well, primarily so I can do Motorhead stuff. I'm a guitarist right now. I own 2. I have an Ibanez RG, and then I have my Epiphone Flying V, which I absolutely love. That's patterned off of Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest. It's a copy of his guitar, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Did you ever watch any of the Motorhead documentaries?
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
I'm like, would a guy like Lemmy be allowed to even surface out of the underworld of rock and roll today? I don't know.
I mean, they were barely allowed to do that back in the 70s.
Well, true.
I mean, when you look at it, the record industry absolutely hated those guys.
But he had one of the most loyal fan bases ever. And I've always wondered what did he do that really connected with fans the way he did.
You know, I think it was really just that he had that spirit of rock and roll of, I don't give a shit. I'm going to go out there and play it loud and play the things I want to play. And if they don't like it, they can fuck off.
Yeah.
And that was really what Motorhead was for the entirety of their career.
Well,
They were just that band that just went out there and played it like they wanted to.
yeah, he really, had said in his documentary, I never really had a direction. I just woke up and I said, you know what, that's cool, and I'm going to do it. And if people think it's cool, great. If not, I don't care. And you don't find that nowadays. Everything is put through a focus group and a profitability filter.
A lot of metal bands are like that these days because it's not a. We'll put it this way: you don't play heavy metal to make money, because there's certainly other genres out there to do that. But it's for the people that really, really love that form of music and really form that basis of what that genre is about. But like there's that ethos of just going out there to play the music you want to play and saying it loud and proud that kind of became a core part of the metal scene.
Well, I got asked why I got into it. I grew up in a very Bible-centric household, and that was not allowed. So I got asked how I got into it. I said, some of the most honest people I've met are metal fans.
Yeah, man. I mean,
you see them with the tats and the shirts on, and they're the nerds and the outcasts, but they're honest and comfortable with who they are. They're not putting on a show for you. And I really started to embrace that, man. It was really once I started doing that, I found all these great experiences in people and music.
Yeah, and one thing I love about the scene too is how welcoming most people are. Like you do have the elements that are like super purists, but most people are just like, hey man, if you're down to throw horns and bang your head with the rest of us, then come on down.
Well, I mean, and there's no better band. My one of my all-time faves that's still rocking is Hatebreed. They really embody that.
Yeah, Hatebreed I've never gotten super into. I know some of their stuff though. I like what I've heard. And they're, like you say, they do have that very, very much of, hey, come on down and party with the rest of us.
Right. So, who else are you into?
My favorite band is Judas Priest.
Really?
Just absolutely phenomenal band. Been doing amazing work for the last 50 years now.
Has it been that long for Rob Halford?
Yeah, well, he joined in 74, so about 46 years. But yeah, the man's almost 70 years old, and I saw them live in 2019. He can still sing like that.
Get out.
They played Victim of Changes, and he hit every scream in that song at 68 years old. I'm like, how? Like, what are your vocal cords made of?
It must be like Teflon or something. I
mean, I have no idea, man. No, they're my favorite by far. Motorhead probably number 2. Again, just because of that sound and that attitude of, like the man says, we are Motorhead. We play rock and roll.
And it is rock and roll. And I really always liked that Lemmy played a bass, but played it like a lead guitar and made it work. And then he goes into the documentary and shows how he did it. And I'm like, that's really not that. It's just turned up really loud, and he just beats the hell out of the Rickenbacker.
He literally just overdrove the hell out of his amp and played it like a 4-string guitar. And I've never seen anyone else do that.
Right. And
it was a really unique sound that was pure Motorhead. Other than that, a lot of the stuff I've been into lately is a lot of newer bands, a lot of them coming out of Sweden.
Yes.
That are all playing this 80s traditional heavy and speed metal that's absolutely fantastic. Like these guys, Ambush.
Okay.
They're only been a band for like 5 years, and I think they have 4 albums out, and I own every single one of them. They're fantastic.
You ever hear of Hammerfall?
Yes, I've seen Hammerfall live. They opened for Sabaton last time. They opened for Sabaton last time I saw them.
I missed that show because I had something else. I was so angry, but I saw them.
It was a great show, man. Hammerfall ended their set with a rendition of "America Fuck Yeah." But yeah, I saw them twice. Actually, no, I've seen them twice. Yeah, they were at Metal Fest in 2016 when I was there. So they were really, really solid live.
I didn't see them at Metal Fest. I saw them at the Palladium. they were the headlining act, and they put on a heck of a live show.
Yeah, they really really did a great job out there, and I mean, I've seen them as an opener, so um, I've never seen them as the headlining act, but I would willingly go see them.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. There's a lot of Swedish bands, bands from Finland, who are really lighting it up, and you know, I gotta raise my glass for a second to Alexi Lawless from not Lexi
Lexi Lyle, yeah.
sorry, yeah, brain fart there from Children of Bottom. I mean, I loved every album they put out.
Yeah, I mean, I've never gotten super into it. I'm not a huge fan of death metal in general as a genre. I mean, I've been getting more into it as I go here, but no, he was a fantastic guitarist.
Right.
One of my friends is that was his favorite dude, and it really sucks to lose a guy like that who's that obviously talented and can consistently put out that kind of stuff. And from what I've heard, he was a great guy too.
Right.
And
So
dead at what, 41 years old?
Telling you, I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're lucky to be alive for more than one reason.
Well, a couple for you and me, but definitely, I feel grateful that I'm still taking in air. So you got into guitar, and what's it like when you play guitar? Because I look at Satriani and Steve Vai and Aaron Johnson, and I'm like, they're not human.
They are absolute machines. Like you see dudes do what Satriani or Steve Vai or Yngwie Malmsteen does, and it's just like I know roughly how to play the instrument, and I'm still sitting there watching their movements. Like, how are you doing that? Like, I'm watching them do it, and it's just something that you just can't replicate. Like for me, I just kind of mess around, play. I play some stuff, but just kind of play around, see what I come up with for the most part. Really, it's more just about, I mean, for me, it helps me focus a lot. And about 3 years ago, I started playing, and I was in a fairly bad place at the time mentally, and it just helped me out so much where I just got to focus and, just do something I could focus on or take my mind off of something for, an hour a day. And it was really good. And that's actually where I came up with the idea for Vets Rock.
That's right. You had the group Vets Rock, man. I think that's where we kind of really first connected. We connected physically at IW Halloween 2020, which was awesome. But it was Vets Rock, and you're like, I couldn't believe you're into that music, Travis. I'm like, yeah, I really like that stuff a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's funny though, right? Where it's like, you don't fit like the typical mold of like the metalhead. Like me, like they get it. Like, yeah, okay.
I tell people, well, maybe I'm more metal than metal because I don't fit the mold, but I'm still metal.
That's actually an excellent point.
It doesn't matter. I don't care if you wear a suit and tie, go to work, or if you have a beard down to your balls and you're studded up. As long as we like the same music, I'm like Manowar, man. They can stop us, let them try. But for heavy metal, I won't die. But you know what I'm saying? It's a part of life. It's a part of life.
Yeah, man. And Manowar, what a band they were. Jesus, it's fantastic. Just
huge regret.
The absolute pinnacle of just no shits given, send it.
Right, and they were very good musicians, but they weren't like trying to be virtuosos. You knew you were getting what you were getting with a Manowar show all the time.
Pretty much, you can just take a look at the album cover and like, yep, okay, this is pretty much exactly Manowar. Loud, over the top, bombastic, and you're gonna love every second of it.
Right, and if you're into Norse mythology, I was really impressed that they went through some of their albums and really told some of the backstory of Odin and the gods and brought to life.
Yeah, that was the cool part. I think with them is it's part of the music as well, and it's got something for everybody. Like you say, there's a lot of mythology that goes into their stuff, and if you're not into that, I mean, there's just a whole lot of straight up headbanging and loud guitar work going on if that's what you're into. So like that, it's like kind of
It,
something for everyone.
it worked for me, man. It worked for me. I mean, all the time. And I'm just waiting, man, for some, you know, the heard. I'm waiting for live shows again.
Absolutely, man. It's
I,
been way too long since I've been to a show.
and
I
I
actually
feel,
had tickets for a show in September that was Sabaton opening for Judas Priest.
oh my God.
And I was just like, I saw that on Facebook. I was like, as soon as tickets went on sale, I was just like, yes, going, don't care how much. Um, and unfortunately, that never happened. So I think they're going to try to reschedule it for this year. But that should be a fantastic time. And I feel bad for all these bands who would really love touring and really want to get out there, and they're just not able to because of the situation right now. So I know a lot of bands are, using this time to record new material, stuff like that, and it's got to be really tough for them to just not be able to go do what they do.
I gotta tell you, I mean, I'll be honest. I got so used to being able to check out the band on YouTube, buy their album if I really liked them. But I never really thought live shows were my thing because I'm buying the album. They're only coming through once a year. I don't care. But now I'm like, I took it for granted. I always thought that, I'm glad I saw Rush when I did before they broke up.
Absolutely, man. Talk about the loss of a freaking legend, man. Neil Peart is probably the best drummer of all time.
Best drummer and one of the best songwriters. When you really start digging into some of the concepts he was trying to write about, I mean, and I
Oh
read
yeah.
his
I
book.
mean, they talked about so much stuff and did it in a very creative way, such that like it didn't like they had a message to send, but it wasn't. It didn't. They never came across as preachy.
No,
They were always just kind of telling their story and singing about what they wanted to sing about. And like some of those songs too, like this iconic music songs like 2112 or Working Man, that heavy guitar riff in the beginning throughout it, that's just 100% Rush to me. And then Geddy Lee on bass and the synth, just that man's a multi-talented guy.
I'll tell you what. I listened to 2112 and thought, yeah, it's kind of out there. But I'm like, if we're not careful,
This is
it's
pretty much where we're going to be at.
this is kind of where we're going to be at, and someone's going to find a old guitar buried in a casket somewhere or in an archaeological dig and start a revolution if we're not careful. I thought 2112 was one of the most underrated, 30 minutes of music you could ever hear, and really had an effect on me.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's amazing that you can come up with just a 20-minute rock symphony and pretty much hit all the bases in that
Right.
period, and do it in that spectacular way where it's very clearly written that the music itself is telling the story, even in addition to the lyrics. And that takes a lot of talent to write like that and make it all come together.
Well, it was just an amazing band, and they're gone, which is why I think it's important to see these bands if you can before they go.
Yeah, I mean, I never got the chance to see Motorhead live before they were all gone. And
Right?
even if they did tour again now with somebody else, it wouldn't be Motorhead.
No.
But
I think one of the best things is the other two members of the band said, we're going to let this just be the end. And I
yeah,
really give them props for
be
that.
what it is, and let it stand on its own. We don't need to keep doing it. And they've both got their own gigs now. I mean, Phil's doing his stuff with Phil Campbell and the Bastard Sons. Mickey D's back with the Scorpions.
So, I mean, it's good. It's good. Speaking of old bands, I'm starting to dip my toe into the Iron Maiden, pool.
Yes.
And
Up
I'm
the
really,
irons.
well, I mean, growing up in a church-centric household, they're the devil. They're evil. If you listen to them, you're going to hell for sure.
Which is really funny about bands like Maiden, especially with some of their lyrics, or even bigger one is Black Sabbath, where yeah, they use dark imagery to talk about their music, but some of it's actually, if they listen to the message behind the lyrics, it's actually a very Christian kind of message. In a lot of cases, like best example I have for that with Sabbath is After Forever, which, no Christian ever listened past that line. Would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool?
No, they don't. They didn't endear themselves to anybody that way. But that's the thing. And I try to tell people, I'm like, yeah, you had the Motley Crues and the Poison and all those guys, and they had their time in the sun. But there's a lot of metal that's kind of really introspective and irreverent, and it's kind of, I think that's why now being out, I really identify with metalheads like yourself, because we're in a reverent, dark, funny. Like Rush was deep, but they could also laugh at themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing I liked about a lot of bands, is they don't take themselves too seriously. Like, I mean, you look at even some of the early black metal bands where like Venom, where throughout the entire 70s, like the entire metal community was, like, no, we don't actually worship the devil. It's fine, we're fine. Then 1981 rolls around and they come out with Welcome to Hell with a goat's head and a pentagram emblazoned on the album cover, and everyone else is just kind of sitting there like, did we mention they're not with us? And it really wasn't about that. And like, yeah, they use satanic language and stuff like that, but it's really just more about the metal attitude of just going out there, having a good old time and doing what we do.
Well, that's one of the things that kind of irritates me is, you think the military and everybody thinks country music. And I'm like, no, there's actually, or rap music, and I'm like, there's actually a subcult of the Marine Corps, especially that, if you're in the metal, you might be a staff NCO and you might be a E2, but there's a bond there you're not going to have with anybody else.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that twigged me to starting Vets Rock, was that I'm like, I'd say I did this and it really helped me out. And I've always been a rock and metal fan. I knew a bunch of other Marines that were. So I kind of put it out to some of the guys in the group, like, hey, if I started a group that's about, music, and especially if you want to learn to play and stuff like that, we can really start getting something together and even just talk about the stuff we love, like we're doing now. Or hell, my eventual goal now is to try to get enough people together to actually get a band going and start playing some shows.
That'd be awesome. I'm trying to learn the bass, and it's slow going. And I got an acoustic guitar that I got through Give a Veterans Guitar program. I'm kind of, part of the problem is these aren't really meant for guitar strings.
Yeah, I have a similar problem where I have these giant bear paws and
right.
I actually had a problem when I first started playing where I had to get a thicker gauge strings, because that high E string, I just could not feel it at all. It was just like, I could be on it, I could not. Who knows?
Well, it's all part of the learning process. And you mentioned how it helped you. I've talked to a lot of guys who said, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, I didn't like school, I definitely didn't like college, but I studied the shit out of, drums. I want to know how to be a better singer. And the guitar just is hours of entertainment, and I'm happy doing it. And I'm like,
yeah, and there's no limit to what you can do with it either. If you're feeling kind of down, you play some down paced, Sabbath type stuff. Whereas when you're really amped up and really want to get into it, play some speed metal. Like, it's really you can do anything you want to put your mind to with a guitar in your hand. And in the case of the right hand, somebody like an Eddie Van Halen or a Joe Satriani, like, you can really make that thing do all the singing you need.
All I want to do before I die is just play Always With You, Always With Me once. That's it. If I can get down on the guitar, then I will consider myself a complete man musically.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'll ever get that good.
It was a simple song. It's just but it's done so well that I'm like,
yeah, it's like, it's not that, yeah. It's not, yeah, you're right. That's not that difficult a riff. That's the thing with some of Van Halen's rhythm stuff, is that a lot of it's not very complicated.
but it's just executed very, very well. It's very tight, and you think, well, it's just studio post work. No, you see them live, and you see the
And
live show.
he would do the exact same thing. And the funniest part I thought was that I was reading an interview with, I think it was David Lee Roth, and they were mentioning that Eruption was never supposed to be a song that they did. That was Eddie's warm up. That's how we practiced.
Get out.
Yeah, and they happened to record him doing it one day, and the producer's like, "No, that's going on the fucking album right now because that's phenomenal." And nobody, I mean, shortly after he passed, I was, everybody was doing interviews about it. Rob Halford was on tour, or was doing a whole round through the podcasts and music magazines promoting his book that he just wrote. And he was sitting there talking about, like, they asked him, like, what were your impressions the first time you heard Eddie Van Halen? And he was like, one of his friends came over and played the cassette for him. And he was like, we must have sat in the car and listened to that thing 3 times cover to cover. Just, and just could not believe what was coming out of their speakers. Because this is 1978, man. Like,
right.
No one was playing like that. Like, Yngwie wasn't a thing yet.
He wasn't. And it's always interesting how, Eddie did his thing, but Yngwie was same kind of virtuoso, but very different style, very different approach, and very different execution. But just both of them were just head and shoulders above everybody else.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely phenomenal players. Steve Vai, too, in a lot of ways, is very similar, where
he experimented a whole lot more.
Yeah, the thing with him is he, like you say, he does a whole lot of stuff that's pretty unorthodox, and I really dig that because he's kind of just playing around with it and seeing what he can do.
No, it's just amazing. So look, ladies and gentlemen, we could talk about music all night, and this is what we've started doing. And Daniel reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I wouldn't peg you for metalhead," and then we got to our next favorite thing to talk about, which is what, Daniel?
That would be Warhammer 40K.
Oh God. Where do we even start, man? I mean, we could do a series, just you and me.
That's the thing, is it's such a huge topic and such a wide variety of stuff within that franchise that's absolutely I think that's honestly one of the reasons people don't get into it, is because they realize, like, they kind of like the art style, they like the games, and then they see the lore and, like, all the stuff there is to know about this, and just kind of like you just kind of like get the eyes glass over and just kind of I
think with the Horus Heresy, I don't have the exact number, but they're pushing, these are main books and anthologies, they're pushing close to 100 books just with the Horus Heresy.
I think just the main series books, they're up to 56, and they're not done yet.
Right. It's crazy.
And that's just one part of 40K.
Well, let's talk about, because for me, like, I don't know about you, for me, it started with, I read, Horus Rising, and then I read the Ultramarines Omnibus and the Space Wolves Omnibus, before I even learned that the bad guys are actually the really cool ones, and they have a reason why they're doing this. So let's talk about the Horus Heresy.
That's the interesting thing with 40K, though, is there are no good guys.
Yes.
Even the quote unquote good faction is absolutely terrible, and only slightly less likely to kill you than everything else.
I've tried. I tried telling somebody, like, there's the Emperor, and he's good, and the legions are all good, and the good Primarchs are all good. I'm like, no, you peel back the layers a little bit, and the Emperor's kind of a douche, and the good Primarchs weren't that good. Like,
and some of the traitor Primarchs were some of the best.
Case in point, I don't like Leman Russ at all.
Yeah, I can get that. I've never been a huge Space Wolves fan. He's an interesting character, but yeah, like you say, he's not really likable. But then again, when you look at his position and what the Space Wolves are built to do, that's not really a surprise. He's supposed to kind of set himself apart from everyone else.
Well, they're setting yourself apart, and then really just
There's actively being a douche to every single one of your brothers.
right, and then he caused problems because he just thought he was right all the time. And then the most tragic one, I'm a big Conrad Kurz Night Lords fan.
I haven't dug into the Night Lord's backstory yet. I haven't gotten that far. I just finished Prospero Burns.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because to me it's the Night Lords, the Alpha Legion, and then the Thousand Sons.
The Alpha Legion's cool as hell if they're well written, because it can get cartoony. I've read a couple of Alpha Legion stories where it's just like, okay, how many wheels within wheels plots are we on now?
Thank you. But by far the most tragic.
Thousand Sons. I love how they wrote the book too, of A Thousand Sons, where basically Tzeentch just straight up tells Magnus at the end, like, you did all this. Yeah. I told you what was going to happen way back when, and you somehow thought you could beat me. And there's really something really poignant about that, where at the end of the book, you see Magnus with basically everything he built on fire around him, having accidentally betrayed his own father, and is put in the position where he literally basically lets his legion be murdered, including himself, because he realizes that they need to be stopped.
He tried for years, and this is where I tell people where the Emperor really didn't help him, didn't help Angron out a whole lot, but didn't because you read later, you'll figure out what the Emperor had in mind for Magnus, and is never.
He even says it in A Thousand Sons, where but like that's really the funny part, is that half of the Horus Heresy could have been avoided if the Emperor had just told people what he was up to.
Right, and he basically lied to his. They weren't his sons. You read later that they were simply a means to an end. You read later that they were going to be used, and like the Thunder Warriors, discarded, but very creatively.
Well, that's a debate in the series right now. Were they? Because you have certain legions, yes, legions like the World Eaters. What the hell are they going to do without a war to fight? When your entire personality revolves around beating someone to death with a chain axe, then I really don't see a need for them in the greater plan. But you look at someone like the Ultramarines. Well, they're the perfect administrators.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that really drew me to the Ultramarines as my favorite chapter, is you see them, and they're a very multi-dimensional chapter, and on tabletop they're very similar. They're a very versatile and very tactics-based chapter, where it's more about adapting to what your opponent's doing rather than you have one play style and that's how you do things.
Well, they are, and some people like them for that, and some people think they're just too straight-laced. There's not a lot of flexibility there, because
they are in a lot of cases the big blue Boy Scouts, and
right.
Depending on who's writing them, they have the worst plot armor I've ever seen.
It's hard because they're supposed to be the good of the good guys.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is 40K, boys. It's okay to let an Ultramarine die every now and again. There's more than a couple of them. Just because he's a named character doesn't mean he has to live.
Well, I'm like, how many lives does Uriel Ventress have? I'm like,
oh my God, he's the worst with it.
Right?
Just how are you still here? And how do you keep getting away with doing the things you do?
So speaking of the Horus Heresy, here's a question I ask people, and I get different answers. How ironic is it that Logar was actually right?
That, I think, is the most beautiful irony about the whole thing, is that he was like the arch traitor if you look at it, really behind the whole thing. For the heresy itself, but in the Imperium that they ended up creating, he would be seen as like the hero. Like him and the ecclesiarchy would get on extremely well.
Right.
In fact, they use his book.
This is the thing that absolutely, blew me away is he believed before the heresy that he was, proselytizing the truth that the emperor was a god. And he wrote that book, Lectitio Divinalis, to that end.
And the funniest thing I think about that is that he managed to screw over his own side in the long run because, yes, he screwed over the Imperium in the heresy, but the whole point of that was to, make sure that chaos was actually on the winning side again, because at the time of the heresy, the chaos gods were pretty closely gone. The emperor was absolutely smoke checking them up and down the webway. And the funniest thing about that is now in 40K with Psychic Awakening, you find out that there is no more argument the emperor actually is a god. Now, whether he was back then or not is irrelevant. Enough people believe in him as the god emperor that he has basically gained the same powers as a god in the war.
But what do you think is going to happen? Because if you read between the lines, the Astrominic and the Emperor's Light is fading.
Yes,
they are.
That's the cool thing. I want to see where they go with it because obviously they're not going to end. Obviously, it's not going to end.
Well, they said that 40K will never truly end, but it's like, okay, you're foreshadowing that there's a major change coming up. The Imperium as a whole are becoming more and more psychic aware, psychic powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The traitor legions can leave and come and go from the eye pretty much at will now. What's going to happen with this? Because I read this book called The Lords of Silence about the Death Guard, and I'm like, okay, I looked at the Death Guard in a whole new light.
Yeah, the Death Guard are a really interesting crew in a lot of ways, and they're an absolutely horrible opponent to face because even if you do successfully drive them off, good luck living on that planet again.
They're hard to kill.
Yeah, like they're almost impossible to kill, and B, even if you do somehow drive them back, the taint of their presence will still be there. It's almost as bad as having an orc horde descend on your planet because once they're there, they're almost impossible to get rid of.
It's kind of funny. I haven't really seen them put out an orc-related book in a while.
That's the thing that's like annoying a lot of the community right now, myself included. Where I'm a Space Marines player, but we want to see the other factions get cool new stuff too, because that way I have new stuff to play against.
Right.
And they get to have their fun with the hobby too. But it seems like because Space Marines are so popular and almost everyone's first army is one chapter or another of Space Marines, then it's almost like the rest of them get no love because the company's just out to make money, which is absolutely the point of this whole thing. But
Games
still,
Workshop.
you do need to balance it out a little bit.
Games Workshop had one of their best years in 2020.
I'm not surprised. Everyone was at home and stuck in their house for months on end, so they had to find something to do. So in a lot of cases, that was buying more.
I gotta find the article.
40K figures.
I gotta find the article. There was an article written about a bunch of active duty Marines that played Warhammer in their spare time, and it was really weird because I think if I read it right, it wasn't just enlisted playing it; it was enlisted and officers playing together. And a lot of people, I think that the thing was they kind of figured out who was a good tactician by how they deployed their armies and played the game. And there's a whole lot of that in that game is about looking at landscape and troop strength.
And also knowing where, and also really one of the biggest parts of 40K that a lot of people don't realize is above and beyond all that, it's knowing what your strengths and weaknesses as an army are.
Right.
Like you can't take the Tau and throw them into melee against the World Eaters. They'll just get slaughtered horribly.
I'm gonna put them off a couple miles with their scopes, and they'll have fun all day.
Yeah, exactly. And vice versa. You don't want to run an army of Black Templars up against the Tau when they're all falling back. and just sitting there sniping at you. So, you have to use your army to its strengths and really, and also exploit your enemy's weaknesses. And that's where I think the Ultramarines come in very handy, is they have a lot of effects and a lot of tactics that you can use to kind of adapt the same army to multiple different situations. And you can do very different things with the same force.
Well, it's a great game. I mean, the only thing that's kind of been my barrier to entry is the pain of the figures, which is, according to some people, just as, if not more important than learning the game itself.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing I've really enjoyed with some of the 40K groups I'm part of, is a lot of people, they don't care what you're there for. It's the same thing with a lot of the BattleTech groups I'm part of, where if you're just into it for the lore, that's cool. I mean, I know guys who don't play tabletop at all. They just play the video games and play tabletop, or not play tabletop, but they play the video games, and then they read the books and stuff like that, and that's cool to me. Is like, you can be part of a franchise that's based around a game that you've never played, and yet still have fun with it.
And I tell people, I think it's one of the few games out there. Well, like Dungeons and Dragons is another one, of course, but this one truly has something for everybody based on your personality. Doesn't matter if you're male, female, big, fat, ugly, whatever it is, beautiful. Depending upon what you like to do, you can build an army around that or read the lore that interests you around that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I've found other factions that I really dig through the lore and reading the books and stuff like that. Like the orcs, I really don't want to play an orc army because they're expensive as hell because you need a lot of models. But they are the absolute most hilarious faction in any game I've ever seen. Where like everything else has a plan.
No, chaos.
Yeah, these guys they're more chaotic than chaos. I mean, chaos, they actually have a grand strategy that they're trying to move towards at their own pace. And yet the orcs just kind of do stuff because it's fun.
They really are kind of fun and kind of over the top, and that's what makes them a blast to read about and play and ask some questions about, how this all happened. But I got the Space Hulk Deathwing game, and I love pounding around in a Terminator, just blowing stuff up.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, especially as a first person shooter, it's like the ultimate power fantasy, because like, you're not just some random dude, you're a goddamn Space Marine Terminator. Like, these guys are like the elite of the elite, and just have this giant hulking suit of power armor with the most devastating sets of weapons in 40K. At least if you're on anything short of a Titan.
Short of a Titan.
And I remember playing Dawn of War and dropping Terminators behind people, and it was just like, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. Oh, he has Terminators. This just got interesting.
Dawn of War 1 and 2 were so much fun, and then Dawn of War 3 and 4 were like, oh my God.
I don't know what they did wrong for Dawn of War 3, but it really just did not have that feel to it. Like 1 and 2, fantastic games.
Tight games.
Oh yeah, I mean, and let's face it, Dawn of War 1 was what, 2004, and I still play it because it's still fun. The other game I still play is Space Marine, which was my entry to the franchise.
Xbox game?
Yeah, I picked it up for like $5, I think, because I liked the cover art, and I'd heard of Warhammer. I'm like, oh, okay. And then within 20 minutes, I got the game gives you a chainsword, and I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm in love.
I played that game. I was on the last level, and my son got it. I hold my controller one day and started playing it, and he overwrote my save.
Oh no! But it really is a great example of what a Space Marine is, because they do make you feel that big, powerful. And they really do a good job of showing just how much bigger Space Marines are than your average person.
Well, you had to have seen the Astartes independent uh, clips, right?
Oh, absolutely. And
Oh
in my
my
mind,
God.
absolutely the best fan made content I've ever seen.
It blew me away. And I'm like, telling my boys, come in here and watch this. This is how you do it. I don't know who that guy is,
And it's
but
one dude who does it already.
yes,
That's amazing to me. And Death of Hope as well. I mean, it's not as brilliant, it's technically brilliant.
less polished.
I really do like what he did though, where he brought 30K to life in a way that we've never seen before. Because
Almost of
we've never had any games or any kind of like real, other than the models, we've never really done much with the Horus Heresy storylines. Like what would be really cool is like a Space Marines or a Space Marine game, like third person shooter that's set during the Great Crusade.
yeah, because I mean, I'd like to see, the Iron Hands led by Ferris Manus, for
Yeah,
example.
I feel like those three legions really got the short end of the stick in the Horus Heresy because basically they just got jumped before they even knew what was really going on and didn't really stand a chance. And like they spend like the rest of the heresy just kind of off doing their own thing, trying to rebuild, and you never see them again.
Not really, and it's pretty evident. I don't think Ferris would be pretty happy with the direction his legion has gone if he was around.
Yeah,
So last little thing on this, I keep thinking, personal opinion as a fan, I think there's a way you can bring back Kurz. I think Sanguinius could definitely come back.
Sanguinius. There's actually a couple ways that have been thrown around as like theory crafting and some of the groups I'm part of, and a couple of the ways that they would talk about I buy. Um, Kurz, I think there's probably a way to do that. Um, Obviously, I mean, they brought Gilliman back, so which that must have been a fun conversation to have with the Primarch. So, oh yeah, by the way, like everything you told us not to do,
We went ahead and did it.
we went and did it to the absolute extreme.
You can tell that he's like, wait a minute, what has happened in the last 10,000 years? You can tell that he's not exactly like adjusting to,
Yeah, yeah, like you can tell, like through some of the newer novels, like he almost seems like that, like just the NCO that was like, he got in trouble over the weekend, and he's just kind of sitting there, just like, oh no, why? Why do you do these things?
Well, I mean, the only other one I want to add, so last opinion is I'm one of these minorities who believe that Alfarius is still alive, that Dorn didn't kill him. Dorn killed a proxy. And I'm told, look, you can read it. He's dead. I'm like, no, I think it's Games Workshop ultimate little trump card that they're going to pull out where he's still alive.
I think you might be right on that one.
Really?
Now,
Okay.
it's confirmed Omegon's still alive.
Yes.
But like you say, I have a hard time believing that, oh yeah, Alfarius is dead. Really? Which one? They all call themselves that.
Thank you. And I'm like, it's so Alpha Legion to make everybody believe that he is dead and gone.
I have a theory that they're not actually a traitor legion.
I believe that as well. And I'm
Because
told
that's
that.
what they do is infiltration. So, and if you look at some of the things they've done as being on Chaos's side, they've kind of screwed Chaos over in a lot of ways. Like look at Vrax, where they dragged them into this long, drawn-out campaign, where yeah, the Imperium was losing guardsmen, but it's it's the Imperial Guard. That's what they're for.
15 minutes, 15-minute lifespan once you hit the ground. I'm like,
Yeah,
that
pretty
must be.
much. I love that too. That basically they're the Red Army on steroids. Where it's just like, it's just people. We have more of those.
Yeah, pretty much.
And really straining resources out of some of the Chaos fleets with both traitor legionaries and ships and stuff like that. And I really think that, like you say, at some point, Alfarius is going to reveal himself again, and then pretty much be like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we've been on your side this entire time, and Dad knows."
I believe it is just too good. A Legion, the Horus Heresy novel, was an excellent freaking book.
Yeah, that was a great book where you never, again, they really did a good job where you never really know what's going on until the very end. Like
And
you
even
think you
then,
do, and then they change.
right? You're reading the end, and it's like, well, what really happens now? And they purposely, let you
Leave that pretty vague,
right,
yeah.
right.
And no, I mean it's really cool to see what it, I mean. Like we said, there's almost 100 books in the series total when you count the short stories and everything, and there's still so many more things they haven't talked about, and some things they've said they'll never talk about, like what happened to the Second and 11th Legions.
Right. They have said over and over again, and they've been asked, but they're never ever going to reveal what happened.
And initially, it was just a way so people could make their own homebrew legions for 30K, just like you could chapters for 40K. But eventually, the mystery started overtaking it, and they started alluding to it in the series. And I haven't read this book yet, but I've seen the interaction where when you have Malkador basically bitch slapping a Primarch for even speaking of it. Like obviously, like it's like this is like no, we don't talk about that.
It was expunged. I mean, completely expunged. They covered the statues because they wanted to mark that they were there. But
And the coolest thing to me is that these little references, especially between the Primarchs, they all know what happened to their brothers.
Yep.
And Leman Russ, I think, was the reason they're gone.
Yeah, and that's why I've always felt like there's a lot. He didn't have a lot of closeness with his brothers because they knew what he was.
And they knew what he could be called upon to do if it was necessary. And that's I think really cool in that they all know who he is and what he's done. And I could imagine that, like, regardless of, how much you like him or whatever, he did kill two of your brothers. So
that'd be hard for me to.
It's like, yeah, like you're never, it's like, we'll still be chill, but we're never going to be the same way again.
Yeah, that's why I like the interaction between him and the Khan. The Khan's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, the Khan's pretty much good with everybody. He's just kind of there doing his thing.
Yep. But it's lots of questions, and I think it's the thing. It's like there's really no good guy.
No, and I love that there's really no end to where they can go with this stuff either. Like they can always go deeper down the rabbit hole into campaigns in the heresy, or during the Crusade, or going even further back towards the Unification War.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how did the Thunder Warriors come into existence? Who actually made the call to cull them? And when was that done? All kinds of stories. Or what happened after Horus got killed? I mean,
they haven't really gone into the scouring yet. I mean, they're up to the Siege of Terra, so I'm guessing we're getting pretty close to that. So
right, or how was Mars taken back? I mean, you just go on, and it's really good. And a lot of people, military wise, like it. And people scoff, well, they can't do that stuff in real life, so why is it even worth reading about? I'm like, well, you've got guys missing limbs, getting prosthetics, going back into combat.
Yeah, pretty much. And
which is what.
And in the case of the Mechanicum, they sometimes didn't even really need a prosthetic; they just kind of wanted it.
Which is weird. We can talk about the Mechanicum another time. That's a whole rabbit hole.
I mean, yeah, I need to do more looking into them because they're a really fascinating chapter or a really fascinating side of things, and they're really different too. Like there's nothing really in sci-fi that's like them.
No, they're the technological hub for the entire universe. They can stop or move progress along if they want to, and they have access to all the knowledge, which is why ignorance is so prevalent, which again seems to go against what the Emperor wanted, which is why if he woke up right now, I don't know what
He'd
he'd
be
do.
mad.
He'd be very mad. Well, brother, I'm looking forward to being able to sit down and talk to you in person, maybe look at your models or whatever. But this has just been a really great time to not really get serious or, promote somebody, but just pretend like I'm in the Humvee or 5 ton driving back from the desert to Yuma to get, clean porta potties.
Absolutely, man. It's just sitting on our packs after a field exercise, just sitting there bullshitting for 3 hours, waiting for the trucks to show up.
It's really been a refreshing change of pace, and I'm going to do it more often. I'm so glad that you took the time to talk with me. And I here's my promise, man. The next time we get to go to a live show, we're effing doing it.
Absolutely.
And
That'd be
I will be in
great.
the pit because I believe in being in the pit.
Absolutely, man. Like, oh, you can get hurt, so don't get back up.
Well, if you don't come away with a bruise, were you really in the pit? Were you really in the
Well,
show?
that's the thing. Like that's like the 3 signs to me that you've been to a good show is that you have a couple of new bruises, your neck hurts, and you can't hear anything for about a day and a half.
That's a good time.
Exactly.
And that's not country, and that's not pop, and that's not rap. That is metal life. All right. Hey, we're closing this down. This is really, folks, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, how two Marines might spend an hour or two talking and bullshitting with each other at any time. And, agree, disagree. This is how we do it. And I loved being able to do this tonight with a dude I consider a friend and brother. Daniel, thank you so much.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. No problem having you on. We got to talk more 40K. I want to see your models, and definitely, let's see when this COVID stuff dies down about doing a band or at least getting a group of us together to go to a show.
Absolutely.
As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, mission in flight.